Before this season began, we had a great idea for a theme garden. We asked all of our volunteers to select their favorite plant for the garden, and we took all of those choices and created a garden called our Volunteer's Choice Garden, or our Ambassador's Choice Garden. It was really neat to see the selections that they picked. We had some new plants, we had some garden standbys, and a few surprises for this garden, but we put them all together, made a design for a garden, and now we have our Ambassador Choice Garden. And right here in this shaded part, we've got some Pentas. This area started out having a little bit more sun, but the tree canopies have kind of filled in a little bit, and it's a little shaded more than what the Pentas would ideally enjoy. But you can see that even though they're a little bit shaded, they are flowering quite a bit. So Pentas was a choice named by several of our volunteers. Right back here we've got a banana plant, and this one was showing some variegation earlier in the year. So that was a little bit of a neat surprise to be able to include a banana in this garden. And some of those traditional plants are plants like daylilies, and one of our gardeners wanted to include iris in the garden, so we've got those represented right here. And right back in the back we have the new Gold Lantana. And last week on our program we were talking about the new Gold Lantana and how it is such an excellent bedding plant for Oklahoma. Last week we were also talking about how to train plants into standards, or balls of foliage on a stick. And I was talking about how you could dig up a plant and pot it up and train it into a standard. And right here, this plant that this stem belongs to would be an excellent choice. You can see it's already growing straight up, but you can dig that up, pot it up, trim away all those lower branches and stake that to where it's growing straight and really have the makings of a good standard. Well, Gerbera daisies were a selection of plant material that I wasn't really expecting, but a great choice. We've got a patch of those right down here in front. These little daisy plants with the huge blooms from South Africa come in just a great hue of colors. You can see a bright red one and the yellow and some oranges, but holding up and blooming quite well despite how hot it's been. Well, we talked about the Pentas over in the shade, and right over here you can see how much happier they are out in the sun. These red and sort of pinkish magenta colored blooms, and you can see over here some of the butterflies and how they are just absolutely enjoying the nectar of those Pentas flowers. Hummingbirds will also come and nectar on the Pentas. Another great perennial for this garden. The Pentas is not perennial, but right back here we have a perennial plant. This is a Shasta Daisy, and this is the one called Becky. And just look how many blooms these plants have on them this time of the year. They just keep flowering. And one thing we could do to kind of clean them up a bit would be to come in and just cut away some of these faded flowers and just kind of make the area have a little bit nicer presentation. But Becky Shasta Daisy, an outstanding Shasta Daisy for Oklahoma. Well, right down here in the front we've got another low-growing plant, rose moss, and this one has performed quite well for us. This one's called Tequila Orange, and it's one of the newer varieties of rose moss. And these new varieties will have their blooms open a little bit longer in the daytime, and even though it's cloudy, somewhat cloudy today, the blooms are still open, and the breeders are also working on getting larger flowers for the rose moss or portulaca. Well, right back here is a perennial that was a perennial plant of the year selection back in 1993. It's a Veronica or speedwell, and this one's called Sunny Border Blue. And you can see it is probably a little bit more blue than it is purple, but a great plant, great perennial for us here in Oklahoma. Sunny Border Blue Veronica. Another blue flowered plant. In the back here is a tender salvia, one that's not going to overwinter, but it's great for beds and containers. This is Indigo Spires, and you can see how this plant gets its name. Those spires of bloom here on the plant rising above this sort of blue-green foliage, but very attractive salvia for the garden. Well, moving back down in front here, another surprise that I wasn't really expecting in choice of plant material for this garden, California poppies. And you can see that this one is still blooming here late in the summer. And of course we came out here and sowed the seed of California poppies back in early to mid-March. You can also sow the seed of California poppies in the fall because they are cool season biennials. Here on the other side of our arch, we have some Bougainvillea planted in this garden. And a couple of years ago on our program, we talked about Bougainvillea and how it blooms better if the plants are stressed. So they actually tend to bloom a little bit better if they are put in containers. They're allowed to be in those containers and get somewhat pot bound and maybe be subject to a dry weather from time to time, and that stress will cause the plants to flower. And you can see this one, it's in this rich soil, it's getting lots of moisture, and we don't have any flowers. We got all leaves and stems. And just right down here though, we got just a few flowering buds just starting out here on the Bougainvillea. But again, to get your Bougainvillea to bloom, you got to treat it a little bit rough. Interesting fact about Bougainvillea is that they're in the same family as our 4 o'clocks. Well, we've got some zinnias in this garden as well, some bright sunny plants that are easy to grow from seed, a great selection. And then right up here we've got a particular cultivar of tropical butterfly weed. We'll get that fly off of there so you can see the color. But this is one called Silky Gold. These are native to Mexico, Central and South America. Great summer bedding plants for Oklahoma. Occasionally they will overwinter, but generally they're treated as annuals. They also come in sort of a red-orange color as well. Well, right up here we've got Mexican bush sage, and at this time it doesn't have any flowers, but in just a few weeks this is just going to be covered with those spikes of purple and white bicolored flowers. Well, a great choice for one of our theme gardens. Just ask all of our volunteers what their favorite plants are, and then we just group them into this garden, and it made a great volunteer's choice theme garden.
Good.